Welcome to Millennials Are Killing Capitalism. Today we have a screening of the recently released documentary Across Enemy Lines, Shaka A. Shakur, put together by Derek Ford and the King Trill, who folks may remember from our discussion about the Pendleton 2 from a few years back. We also previously held a screening of Shaka Shakur's first documentary with a panel, and I'll link both of those along with our prior interview with Shaka in the show description. This new film is produced by the Shaka Shakur Freedom Campaign. After the screening, we'll have some commentary and discussion from Shaka Shakur, Derek Ford, Haki Kweli Shakur, and Elle, who is an organizer with the Shaka Shakur Freedom Campaign in New York. We recorded some of these segments back in February just for context. We'll also talk a little bit about Shaka's new book, Manifestations of Thought, When the Dragon Comes, the selected writings of Shaka A. Shakur. And in addition to that, we'll talk about the ways you can support or get involved in organizing in support of Shaka. All of the relevant links and information are in the show description. Make sure you check that out, get connected, and support. And pick up a copy of Shaka's new book. Now, here is Across Enemy Lines, Shaka A. Shakur.
Yeah, I was gonna say something about my mom's, man. My mama passed away on August 1st of this year, 2024. Passed away from her, lost her battle with leukemia, cancer, and dementia. Cancer having spread to her lungs. Mother was, 85 years old? And when they told me that she was what they call transitioning, that she only had hours to 3 days to live, I had called up there. My wife was there, and my mother had been unresponsive for 2 days. My only thing in response, they was get out of her. She would stretch her legs out, and no facial movements and nothing, like eyes closed, etc. So I asked my wife to ask Akili to put the phone up to her ear and let me say my goodbye. And I said my goodbye to her, and I talked to her for about 10 minutes. She didn't open her eyes, but she raised her eyebrows. She heard me. That was an acknowledgement that she heard what I had to say, And I just told her, you can let go. We gonna be all right. And you lived a good life, you lived a long life, and you can let go, And the following day, she passed. And what's so crazy about that, I'm not a real religious person. I have my own homegrown spirituality and what have you. And that day, I was out on the yard lifting weights, working out with my little workout crew, and a wave of emotions hit me. And I was like, damn. I just teared up out of nowhere thinking about it. I'm like, damn, where they come from? And I told one of the guys I was working out with, I said, I bet you my mama just passed, And I'd be damned if I didn't go back into the building after rec. And the CO said, hey man, the unit manager want to see you upstairs. So I knew then. I go upstairs, she said, you got an emergency phone call. Called my wife, and she told me my mother passed. And it was exactly around the same time that I felt that wave of emotion. Rest in peace and rest in power to Leola Jones.
Why wasn't Shaka Shakur allowed to visit his dying mother or attend her funeral? Why is he still in domestic exile, having been sent to Virginia in 2018 without any due process, where this husband, father, grandfather, human rights advocate, and tremendous human being still remains hundreds of miles away from his family and his community?
The thesis of my life, do what is right now. Never stop the fight, I'm never going back down. I can't expect I will see a high age unless we take power, I'm locked in a cage. The life that I chose, now it ain't a choice. Responsibility that I have with this voice.
My name is Derek Ford, and I'm the Organizational Relations Director at the Indianapolis Liberation Center, as well as a professor at a local university, a small liberal arts college. And I am one of the co-coordinators of what is now the Shaka Shakur Freedom Campaign. And it was in the fall of 2023 when several organizations joined the new Liberation Center that we started, that I started communicating with Shaka, and we ended up starting what was then a group called Free Shaka Shakur. Corresponded through email and through phone, and talked a lot and got to know each other and developed a very genuine political relationship at first, and then a friendship, and then, you know, eventually kind of a mentorship. The Shaka Shakur Freedom Campaign is a 501c3. It's a national organization. So we have an Indiana chapter. Shaka is in Virginia. There's a Virginia chapter. There's also a West Coast chapter around the Bay Area. And there will likely be many more chapters. And it's about freeing Shaka, but also freeing all political prisoners of war, and really everybody, you know, behind the bars. There's so many incredible characteristics of Shaka as an individual, and also as to what he represents, because Shaka is not about freeing Shaka Shakur only. He's always thinking about other people.
Shaka and I met, I think it was in 96 or 97, to actually meet, because I was working with Northwest Indiana Coalition against maximum control prisons, and he was incarcerated at Indiana State Prison. And we were going in with Human Rights Watch, and they were doing the investigation about everything, and we were building up to that. So they hadn't moved him to Westville with the Westville 6 yet. So I got a chance to kind of meet him then. I was there, we were interviewing people, and I kind of saw him at the corner of my eye. And I was like, oh, okay. We got to interview people. He kept sending people away so he could finally get a chance to talk to me. And that's kind of like really when we really started corresponding with one another about the situations.
So I first met Shaka Shakur in the summer of 1992. I was just out of college, and I had moved to Chicago with some friends. And in a Southside grocery store, there was a flyer for a protest. In Westville, Indiana, there was a Supermax, and there is a Supermax prison there, the Maximum Control Complex, the MCC. And there was a protest being organized outside of that prison in solidarity with prisoners engaged in a hunger strike against conditions of physical torture, psychological torture, sensory deprivation. And I went out to that protest, and it was organized by the Committee to End the Marion Lockdown. When I got out there in the fields of Indiana outside the Supermax, I found out by talking to fellow demonstrators who was a key organizer of the hunger strike on the inside, and that was Shaka Shakur. So at that point, I got his address. I wrote him. We started corresponding in a very in-depth correspondence for months. He really educated me.
I've been to multiple forums where we're speaking about the prison struggle, and, you know, Shaka comes up and he gives a speech from the phone telling new young people about the struggle, how to work, how to organize and be together in community. And that's really important that he's even has the willingness to, with all the struggles that he's been through, still organize and try to help people outside of his state, outside of his situation.
Shaka had a history already with the group. He was always sending out correspondence and stuff, and the things that he would be able to put in perspective for the people that were in the group took a lot of pressure off of me for having to explain. And they had, I can't think of his name right this moment, but the warden there, he hated me. Which is kind of hard to understand why, but he hated me. And he told Shaka that I was probably bad news, that he should stay clear of me. And so that, I guess that warning was really, he's not going to do anything. I got to find out why they feel this way. But yeah, I loved his locks. So that was amazing. And but I think I fell in love with Shaka's mind, his intellect, because I'm a historian, and he is very well versed in history, and history and politics coincide together. So we had a lot in common in regards to the way we saw the world.
I ain't the most easiest man to love, and I ain't, it ain't always been easy. It ain't always been easy for her. But good or bad, right or wrong, thick or thin, she's always had my back. She's always been there. I'm highly appreciative. I need somebody to lean on and whatnot, as well as vice versa. She's been there for a brother. And I'm highly appreciative, and I'm lucky. I'm fortunate. You don't always find that. We have our disagreements and ideological differences, etc. But in the end, it's us against the world. It's always been that way.
The very interesting thing about my dear friend, Shaka Shakur, is that, he's been involved in the juvenile system, going into his adult life, incarcerated. But he had reached a point where he began to understand the politics about finding yourself locked in that system and what is necessary and what you have to do within to turn that situation around and remove yourself from that equation. Not only did he learn it, but he started teaching it to other people.
Because our people, our parents, we struggling to try to survive and try to make it, especially the men. We don't have time for what they call a warm and fuzzy, the mentoring and whatnot. Boy, I'm trying to make it. I'm trying to survive for you. I'm putting a roof over your head, clothes on your back, and so forth, food on the table. And so sometimes we seek other places for that, And for me, crime was a form of rebellion. For a lot of young black men, new African men coming to prison, a lot of us, we don't know our history. We're not taught. We're given watered down version of our reality in the schools. A lot of us is alienated from the schools, school curriculums, and high school, etc. We lose interest in the school by the time we reach high school. I came in gang affiliated, street organization affiliated. I've always had leadership skills. I've always been able to motivate, galvanize other folks, and dudes seen something in me because I was a little wild. Well, I ain't gonna say a little wild, I was a lot of wild. You know what I'm saying? And, and some of the old heads seen something in me and was like, brother, if you was to use that energy, and them gifts or skills or whatnot, more towards the service of your people, you would be a hell of an individual.
I met Shaka back in, I believe it was 1983. We were down at Westfield. And as I began to evolve, politically, I just began to see things that was hurtful. After I finished Malcolm X's autobiography, I was in tears. Literally in tears. Back to Penland, once I got my involvement, I look around maybe 3 days later, here comes Shaka on lockup from Westfield. Now that's where we really got together, because I broke it, gave it, look here, man, read this. And I was so proud of my involvement, I started ordering books like it was going out of style. And he's the only one that I would let highlight in my books. Because people highlight senseless stuff sometimes, but he would never highlight nothing senseless, And he was just, man, like one of the very first people I met during my incarceration and involvement that I was mentoring to, because we were on the same lockup unit, MRU, the same one, Brother Lomar was jumped on, and Penland 2 came to his aid. And we just every day. And he was young. I think he might have been about 18, but he was hungry. And that was the difference to me.
Once I made that qualitative leap, man, and started studying, different philosophies and theories and getting that history, it made me commit to the struggle. And it made me want to do something with my life. Made me want to be something other criminal minded. It made me want to be somebody that was not victimizing people and just running around oppressing people, but being on the other side of history of somebody that was giving something back. And also honoring the debts to my ancestors.
Shaka ended up doing 15 years in some of the hardest institutions in the country, and that politicized him. That he turned the prisons into a school of revolution. And as he's done that, just like how George Jackson did that in Soledad and San Quentin, the prison authorities punish people to the point of in Shaka's case, sending him to the supermax, to prolonging sentences. In George Jackson's case, of course, he never made it out alive. So there are folks like Shaka and George who are doing time because of their activism on the inside of the walls. And we clearly see that today with Shaka, like all the extra levels of punishment that he's, to the point of being transferred to Virginia, to the point of being beaten, to the point of having his mail tampered with, these things flow from his politics.
In March 1972, around 8,000 people gathered in Gary, Indiana for the National Black Political Convention. It took place at Westside High School, the same school both Shaka and Akili attended. In many ways, it was a who's who of the various trends of the Black liberation movement. You had Bobby Seale, Betty Shabazz, and Muhammad Ali, alongside Jesse Jackson, Amiri Baraka, and Richard Gordon Hatcher, the mayor of Gary and one of the first Black mayors at the time. Although the goal of the convention was its slogan, unity without uniformity, afterwards, the distinction between revolutionary and reformist Black politics was clear. The lines were drawn between those who wanted a seat at the table of the existing status quo and those who wanted to overturn it.
After years of being in the New African Independence Movement and develop myself within the New African Independence Movement, I came to know of Shaka through one of our comrades, now an ancestor and a mentor of mine by the name of Shaka Shakur. Many people know him as Monster Cody. And I came across a lot of Shaka's work and, within their time during the Spirit and Shield era, and the work that they did with the Spirit and Shield Collective within the New African Independence Movement, as well as work that they have been collaborating on years behind the prison walls through individuals like Atiba Shani. And I got to meet Shaka a little bit years later, probably around 2016, 2017, when the New African Liberation Collective was being formed and things of that nature. And we formed a relationship through the New African Liberation Collective work.
Within several months of correspondence with Shaka, he then proposed that we start a newsletter by prisoners so that there was a very advanced revolutionary New African prisoner movement in Indiana at the time. People who had been very politicized. They were studying George Jackson. They were studying the Black Panthers, Malcolm X. They were studying liberation struggles elsewhere in the world. And Shaka was part of that. He was organizing study groups. They were organizing and struggling for basic rights on the inside and connecting with movements on the outside. Consequently, the Indiana prison system was separating out these cadre from each other, and some of them were isolated in the supermax, like Shaka. And so Shaka's idea was, we get a PO box. The prisoners write me. I format with a small team of people I could recruit, which I did. We format the writings, create a newsletter, and then mail it into prisoners throughout Indiana so that they can communicate with each other, keep developing their movement, and also it would be a tool to educate people on the outside about the revolutionary prisoners movement in the early 90s. And so this was called Human Rights Held Hostage, and it took off. Before time, it spread to hundreds of prisoners throughout Indiana and across the U.S.
The Republic of New Africa is a name given to the Black nation in America by 500 nationalist leaders at the Black Government Conference held in Detroit, Michigan, and convened by the Malcolm X Society on March 29th through 31st, 1968. The RNA consists of a population of millions of ideas.
We want the world to understand that there's a nation of peoples within the Empire of the United States of America who's struggling to destroy the heart of the beast when it comes to our oppression, our status in the world, and also trying to free the land and get to our ultimate goal as well, is where the Palestinians is trying to get to today, which is nationhood, statehood, and the freedom of our people and the freedom of all oppressed nations of peoples and ethnic groups across the world.
But just for the record, like we talk about colonialism, the way I can break that down for you in a layman term where you can understand, let's say you were a nation and I'm a nation. Or even better, let's say you got a community and I got a community. You understand? And let's say I got an organized force from my community. And we come into your community. And we take over your community. We take over the economics of your community. We occupy your community. You understand? We say, for example, in your community, you got resources. Then you got gardens and other things of value. And we take control of that. We seize that for the benefit of my community. And we give you a few crumbs of it. You understand? And then we have an enforcement force. We come up with all kind of laws and rules and whatnot that's in our best interest, but not necessarily your best interest. But we got the guns and force to enforce those rules and those laws. Okay? Let's say I set up institutions and so-called schools and whatnot in your community to now teach you how to bow down and accept those rules and make you look at those rules as being legitimate. And over a period of time and generations, you understand, because this all you've been taught and this all you know, even you start saying that those laws and rules are legitimate. And you voluntarily now hand over those resources that you have in your community to my community that's not in your best interest. And we'll fight on my side against your own interests. You know what I'm saying? Now I'm going to give you a name. You're no longer whatever your name was or your nationality was. I'm going to name you after me and my nationality. And now I'm going to give you a flag to worship and bow down to. Matter of fact, I want you to say you pledge allegiance to that flag. You understand? So now your kids and your babies, when they go to my schools that I done created with my curriculum that I'm teaching you, you gonna say you pledge allegiance to my flag and you gonna learn what I want you to learn and what I teach you. You understand? So that's the basic cornerstone of colonialism.
Because of the unique character of our oppression, of our historical development, we have a profound need for a national identity.
Every people has a rhythm of its own. You know, the rhythm may be disrupted, but it never stops. You know what I'm saying? Every people has its own beat. You know what I'm saying? Culturally, language, social interaction, so forth and so on. New African people are no different. Even though Africa was raided and we were captured, our ancestors was captured, and we fought back, we resisted, just like all other people. We had our traitors and those that collaborated, so forth and so on. But that within itself was the origin of, in the beginning, the genesis of the creation of the New African nation. Okay? Because through that process, you had many from different nations, different tribes, different languages, different religions, or what have you, right? But if you remember, it was a scene in Roots when they was on that boat down in the belly of the boat, and they was all chained and shackled together in the belly of the boat, and they started hollering out their tribal identities. You know what I'm saying? In what languages they spoke, and they started organizing. And they were like, I speak this, I speak that. I'm from the tribal, boo boo boo. I'm from an Igbo, I'm Ashanti, I'm this. And that was them organizing right there. You know what I'm saying? That was that genesis, that many forming into one. You know what I'm saying? Taking shape, you know. And it is through that whole process that continued on as we entered into the Western Hemisphere, onto the islands and onto the slave plantations and whatnot. You know, you had a whole new identity forming and taking shape through that common oppression. You know what I'm saying? Giving rise to a religion, giving rise to a way of speaking, giving rise to language, ultimately giving rise to blues and jazz and gospel and spirituals and so forth. You understand? The way we dance, the way we move, the way we interact, the way we make love and everything else. You know what I'm saying? That was unique to our people. You know, that was shaped and formed by the social conditions and the social reality and our response to that social condition and the social reality that we was dealing with within the Western Hemisphere, okay? So although we're separate from the continent of Africa, we're no less African than anybody that's in Nigeria, that formulated into Nigeria, Ghana, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, etc. We just as a people and as a nation form over here in America. You know what I'm saying? That's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is, you know, contrary to the statement by Kanye West about slavery being a choice, and giving the impression that there was no resistance, we've always resisted. You understand? We've always organized. We've always fought for independence and separation in land. You know what I'm saying? Whether it was in the form of the Maroons, you know, moving and fighting and retreating to the mountains and the hills, you know, whether it was in the form of Nat Turner, you know, with his military strikes and so forth, and so forth. So with that being said, that resistance has never stopped. You know what I'm saying? That desire to be free and self-governing and independent has never stopped.
Queen Mother Moore was actually the individual who came up with that identity, New African, because when she went to Africa, so when she went to Ghana, she was given this royal title by the Ghanaians as you're a Queen Mother. So when she got this title, Queen Mother, and when she came back to the United States of America and got with the Obadeli brothers, you know, they was brainstorming on what should we call ourselves and things of that nature. So she just was like, hold on. So, you know, that took a whole lot of study of our social development here in the empire, all the way from slavery all the way up until 1968. So as they studied that period of time in those generations, you know, and things of that nature, they seen it as, okay, we are a people that descend from Africans, but when we got on this landmass and we also going through this terroristic system called slavery, you know what I'm saying, on the plantations, we started to develop socially amongst ourselves into a new people.
Revolutionary greetings. My name is Brother Maurice, member of the Virginia Shaka Shakur Freedom Campaign and also member of the New African Freedom Campaign. I'm going to read to you all the New African Creed. Number 1, I believe in the spirituality, humanity, and genius of Black people and in our new pursuit of these values. Number 2, I believe in the family and community and in the community as a family, and I will work to make this concept live. Number 3, I believe in the community as more important than the individual.
When he got out, he was very active in his community, helping people at every turn, especially the youth. That was his focus. And he had a son at the time.
Father Shaka was very interactive. You know, he was extremely excited about spending time on the streets with his son because he was forever writing him. Back then you didn't have where you could do FaceTime or anything like that. So he was writing him and he would call and he would always try and find ways to make sure that if he needed anything, and even his siblings, that though they weren't his biological kids, they were his kids. And so whatever holidays come around, he would find a way to send special gifts and to make sure that J La's mom had, things that not only for him and J La's his son, for all the kids that were in the family. And so his relationship with J La was really growing.
His son was involved his son was murdered. His son had his life taken, and in just a senseless killing. And it really impacted Shaka in a very, very, as it would any parent who loves their child, in a very hard way. Extreme depression, extreme guilt, extreme anxiety that he was trying to overcome, because he was spending so much time helping the youth, including his son. But to lose your own son while you're helping so many young people, it really impacted him in a negative way, as it would anyone.
J La was killed, leaving someone's house, and he was shot in the back. And he died on the scene. And when that happened, it really tore Shaka apart. Mentally, physically, he was just a wreck.
And then the fact that, like, a lot of people don't know me, that he had called me about 15 minutes or so before he was murdered.
Well, by the time he got the next phone call, they were telling him that J La had been shot. There's no ambulance, there's nothing. There's police, and his son is laying there in the street.
And once he was out, still undergoing the scrutiny and the harassment of the local authorities, who were looking at every turn to get him locked up again. And everything he had worked so hard to build, because of his emotional state, it tumbled down. He got himself into a situation against those police who were harassing him constantly. And during the course of that altercation with them, he did not deprive anyone of life, but just for that altercation with the authorities, they arrested him and they gave him an ungodly amount of time. And he's been there ever since, he's been there ever since.
Times preponderance, it would have been something like 20 years, and then you add 40 on to that. He did that, but when he got through adding on what comes up under the 3 strikes, then he ended up with the time that he's got.
Yeah, the interstate compact, officially it's called the Interstate Corrections Compact. And what it is an agreement between states where they enter into a contract to send and receive or swap prisoners from their particular state. I was sent out of state in December 2018 to the state of the Commonwealth of Virginia. I wasn't allowed a hearing. I was just asked to sign a classification paper form on the way out the door, which I refused to sign. And until we kept pressing about it, after 3 years, I was allowed to file a classification appeal challenging the decision, which was really just perfunctory. There's no real review. There's no real evaluation. And you just receive a notice in the mail saying appeal denied. You were appropriately placed.
State of Indiana deemed him a threat because he educated prisoners. And for that, they sent him to Virginia.
2018, December 2018, Shaka was in Indiana prison, and he was basically kidnapped.
This is not a Fed case. This is a state case. They sent him to Virginia to do Indiana time. That's how much he was educating, and as they say, radicalizing the inmate population.
That, to me, is just, it goes to show you how barbaric the U.S. quote-unquote criminal justice system is. And really, in one of the pieces, he talks about, the Fugitive Slave Act, really. I mean, the fact that they can just transfer you without any due process and for no reason, right? At least no legitimate reason. Because the real reason they transferred him is because he was organizing.
Yeah. It's far better to remain principled and true to one's convictions, even if it means standing alone, than to sell out even an inch to join the chorus of what's popular. The future will indeed show us to have been correct and on the right side of history. Yeah, history will absolve us, the world will be free. Challenges and setbacks will finally cease. Strength of our vision, clarity is key. Organize for change, sacrifice what we need. History will absolve us, the world will be free. Challenges and setbacks will finally cease. Strength of our vision, clarity is key. Organize for change, sacrifice what we need. Vilify me, criticize me, throw me to the ground. Brutalize me, crucify me, hate my very sound. I seldom give a shit because I'm marching to the beat of the maybe decades off final people's victory. My mind is more than focused, my ideology is firm and can't be penetrated by our enemies. Their way of life must suffer a painful morbid death. I'm all for violence on behalf of the oppressed. You wanna judge actions of the wretched of the earth? Your privilege and your chauvinism has no further worth. The right of revolution is front and center now. The people are not cowardly, that spirit's not allowed. Historically we're hip to our mission and our purpose. Modern slaving system beyond being worthless. Rage of the masses is inwardly focused. Once we turn it outward, we're no longer hopeless. History will absolve us, the world will be free. Challenges and setbacks will finally cease. Strength of our vision, clarity is key. Organize for change, sacrifice what we need. History will absolve us, the world.
In terms of, as an individual, I think that it's unintelligible. I can't make sense of how somebody who has undergone so much horrific treatment and horrific injustice maintains a sense of revolutionary optimism and hasn't given up and continues to fight and continues to be humble also. I think that those are distinct qualities that I look up to in him for sure.
They moved him 1,000 miles away from home. He's not able to see his wife. He's not able to be around and build with the people who actually love and care for him. And it becomes a very strenuous and stressful situation. But nevertheless, he pushes forward. Nevertheless, he's full of encouragement. He's full of hope, and he's full of determination. It's just, for me personally, it's just a lot to be learned from that man who was able to endure so much, but still come out of it with your head high and push it forward. And that's why we fight like hell to get him back home to the people that love him the most.
Being out here, out of state, out here in exile, in Virginia, away from my family and what I have left, it's hard, man. It's a struggle. Being under constant attacks, repression, it's hard to maintain that balance and not throw your life away behind these walls, because that's the easy way, the easy route to take. It's easy to come out this cell and just go crazy, and what have you. But it's hard. It's the hard struggle is being able to navigate this terrain, avoid them traps, be scientific, be a critical thinker, outmaneuver, and be successful in what you're trying to do and what you're doing. And I'm behind these walls, but I ain't laid down. I'm not going to lay down. And for my mama, I'm going to continue to fight until you either carry me out of here or I walk up out of here.
Leaders, I refuse to be passive or liberal. I will militantly oppose the criminals. They on Wall Street and they in number 10. They run the world while the masses are suffering. Will it take sacrifice, something drastic? I know the struggle will bring plenty of caskets. But is it cool to have peace and enslavement where the most don't even have the basics? I say hell nah, and you know that's real, and so you can't blame me. I just
never be a slave. See, I would never be a slave. Never be a slave. Said I'll never be a slave. See, I would never be a slave. Never be a slave. Never be a slave. See, I would never be a slave. Never be a slave. Said I'll never be a slave. See, I would never be a slave. Never be a slave.
See, I am the reincarnation of Emmett Till. The slave master's whip is something that I'll never feel. Probably never sign a record deal, I can't be a pawn. See, this is more than just a track that I'm spitting.
All right, so that was Across Enemy Lines, Shaka A. Shakur. Now we have some additional commentary and discussion from Shaka Shakur, Haki Kweli Shakur, Derek Ford, and L. Thanks to everyone for joining us for this discussion. Make sure to check out all the ways you can support and get involved in the struggle to free Shaka Shakur. Haki Kweli Shakur, thank you for joining us. It's nice to actually meet you in this digital space. Been aware of your work for a long time, promoting and sharing information and, knowledge from the New African political thought, New African independence movement, and so on. And it's good to be with you.
Yeah, thank you, man. Free to land, man. It's an honor to finally meet you, man. I've been following your podcast and work and stuff like that for a minute as well. So, man, I'm just happy to be here, man.
Thank you for joining us. I mean, one of the things I wanted to ask you, because you speak about it in the documentary, and one, your relationship to Shaka, but also helping folks a little bit to ground his politics in a set of, people and a kind of lineage of political thought. I mean, one of the things you talk about in the documentary is obviously mentorship from Shaka Shakur.
Yeah.
And so just talk a little bit about like who some of these folks are and what do you see as kind of their key contributions, and maybe towards the tail end, like what do you see as Shaka's, contributions to the New African independence movement and political thought as well?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. To frame it all, I would just say that in the totality of the, section of the New African Independence movement that we come out of is it's a lineage there. I would just speak from my perspective of it is the fact that I come under those elders, those specific elders like Dr. Matulu Shakur, Shaka Shakur. So it's this whole connection here within that whole Shakur tribe when it comes to that aspect of the New African Independence movement. But outside of that, what I'm saying, Pacific group, I mean, we come under the lines of people like Queen Mother Moore, Robert F. Williams, but specifically Dr. Amari Obadelli. Let me just put that out there because he is an ideological father of the New African Independence movement. But to be specifically directed towards like far as Shaka and them, you would have to go look at individuals like specifically Atiba Shani, Owusu Yaki Yakubu. He's kind of like that Pacific elder that comes out of the Black Liberation Army, the New African Independence movement, and that whole New African prisoners organization movement, you know what I'm saying, and stuff like that. So, because Shaka Shakur as well, he that's his mentor as well, Atiba Shani. So I look at it from that type of lineage coming under those individuals out of that New African prisoners organization that they call NAPO. But over time, it was other organizations that were starting to form outside the wall, like the New African People's Organization. So you got elders out of that lineage as well that contribute to, a lot of our political evolution and stuff like that, even Shaka's and things of that nature. So it's this whole New African revolutionary nationalist line that we call NARN that is a big segment of the prison, movement Like George Jackson and all those individuals, they kind of like forefathers as well. But then you have people that come after that in the 70s and the 80s that specifically come out of that line of George Jackson, who are also, contributors to that new African revolutionary line. So it's so many of us, it's hard to even break it down. You know what I'm saying? Those elders that come out of that prison movement that contribute to that whole thing. But specifically from our line, it would come from, Dr. Matulu, you know what I'm saying, Atiba Shani, people like that, and just several other individuals as well. But me specifically in Shaka, I would have to say it comes directly out of Atiba Shani, Wusa Yaki Yakubu, and that line of elders who passed the torch on to us and things of that nature, and then Sanyika Shakur.
No, thank you. Yeah, and for folks who might have heard him under different names, James Yaki Sales, above me, the meditations on the wretched of the earth from France Fanon. Excellent book and collection, not only of his meditations on wretched of the earth, which we did a study group on that along with wretched of the earth, reading them side by side. And I still tell everybody who's like a Fanon fan, scholar, follower or whatever, like you have to read the way that Yaki, laid that all out. And there's also, in addition to that, a bunch of other of his collected writings that's in that book as well.
Right.
One thing I did want to ask you too, because you mentioned Queen Mother Moore, both now and also in the documentary, is, we recently, Josh hosted a conversation with Ashley Farmer, who has a new, biography out on Queen Mother Moore. But I'm interested specifically from, the lineage that you would draw of revolutionary nationalism, new African revolutionary nationalism, kind of the role that you see Queen Mother Moore as having played in that, and anything specific that you would want to share about her from your perspective.
Yeah. Great question. I would just say this in framing the context of her importance to the New African Independence Movement is that she's the mother. That's why she's called Queen Mother Moore. You know what I'm saying, and things of that nature. Without her, and then to take it back, let me take it back a little bit. If people don't know who Queen Mother Moore is, Queen Mother Moore was a Garveyite. She was a significant person that comes out of that Garveyite movement at a period in time that was transitioning. When the Communist Party was really at the height of organizing in the like the early 1920s and stuff like that. So when she was sprung, through that movement, the UNIA, ACL, and stuff like that, coming under Marcus Garvey and those first African, revolutionary nationalists and things of that nature. She was the mentor of Malcolm X. A lot of people don't know that, you know what I'm saying, when it pertains to her story, is that she was significant to the growth of Malcolm X as a revolutionary nationalist, black nationalist, and things of that nature. But pertaining to, Queen Mother Moore in the lineage that we come up under, there's one specific patriarch that comes from under her tutelage as well, is an elder ancestor by the name of El Haj Saladin Shakur. If people don't know who that is, I suggest them to go research who El Haj Saladin Shakur is. He's actually the first individual, and he's actually a close comrade of Malcolm X as well. He was in all of Malcolm X's organizations. So when Malcolm was assassinated, El Haj Saladin Shakur and Queen Mother Moore and all these individuals, they were kind of like under the same, because they all was in New York at this specific time. Let's put that out there. So that's how they know each other, and that's the relationship and stuff like that. So, when Saladin, became one of those specific elders and mentors as well, this is where that whole Shakur thing comes from, the Shakur tribe. He's the first Shakur to name himself that in America. So he's like that whole family, that whole Shakur family are Malcolmites. And in order for you to be a Malcolmite, you have to be under Queen Mother Moore, who is actually his mentor. So this is where all this starts to tie in and stuff like that. And then later on, after Malcolm got assassinated, she's one of the, founders of the New African Independence Movement, of the Republic of New Africa. She's the first signer of the Declaration of Independence, declaring that we are, a nation that is struggling for independence here in the empire and things of that nature. So under that whole tree, that Shakur tree and things of that nature, Queen Mother Moore was the mentor of all of them. You know what I'm saying? Like when you go back into the history and you start to do the research on her importance, and to that specific movement of the New African Independent Movement, she's the teacher, she's the mentor, she's the mother of all those specific revolutionaries. Even the revolutionaries that come out of the Black Panther Party at that point in time, like Lumumba Shakur, Zaid Shakur, Bilal, Sonny Ali, Sekou Odinga, all these great revolutionary freedom fighters, all these people. This history is not told like that, but all of them, at one time sat at the foot, the feet of Queen Mother Moore and things of that nature.
Derek, I just wanted to ask, you've, gotten much more involved in the last few years with the campaign, to free Shaka Shakur, and with these projects, this book project, as well as this new film. So maybe you could talk a little bit about kind of your role in these projects, your relationship with Shaka Shakur, and what you think are some of the key contributions of this new work.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so I first got involved in the prison struggle in Baltimore as part of Eddie Conway's legal defense team for a period of time, and got to see him free, on the streets eventually, and as I will Shaka. And we started a new liberation center in Indianapolis in the fall of 2023. And I was introduced to Shaka by Jock, who runs Focus Initiatives, which is like an abolitionist reentry program. And actually, looking back, in my first email to Shaka was Christmas Eve of I think 2023, and we at first, communicated over email and the phone and talked politics. And he wanted to know my political line, our political line, particularly as it pertains to the Black New African nation. And we believe in the right, all oppressed peoples to self-determination, up to and including cessation. And, because like, what good is the right to divorce, or like the right to marry, if you can't also have the right to divorce? And so, we immediately found a lot of points of alignment, but also we, like, it's clear Shaka's not afraid to question you, either like to push you further to clarify your thought, or to ask a genuine, like, you said this, I don't know what this means, right? And so we started a group called Free Shaka Shakur, which was I'm sure there's been many iterations, right? Because people have been working with them for decades. But it was based out of the Liberation Center. So having a physical home is really important for like producing zines, having events, being able to get mail, right? And so they grew. And then the next year we became a 501c3. Which we are now, the Shaka Shakur Freedom Campaign. So like the headquarters is the Indianapolis Liberation Center, but we have branches, all across the country, some of which are represented today. And of course, Shaka's in Virginia. And so I was making a website for him. That's what, like, the first thing I did, and I'm not for him, with him, I should say, because Shaka's deeply collaborative, and so I was going through these old writings, and we're trying to figure out what to put up when, and eventually I'm like, "You never written a book, like what, like I mean, this book is like, it was hard to select what to include and exclude, right? Because he's such a great writer, like he can break things down to like, not to like the lowest common denominator, but just like in an accessible way to so many people. Um, Things that like are, crucial, right? So I realized, once again, like the significance of specifically, like not just a Black liberation struggle overall, but the new African independence movements and the fight for the Republic of New Africa, and Shaka's take on it in particular, and his role, like his steadfastness, like as he says at the end of the documentary, like, I ain't leaving until I walk up out of here. Y'all carry me up out of here. Like, he really means that, which doesn't mean he's reckless, of course, right? He's smart, but so so we started putting it together and we just thinking, how can we break this up? We wanted the audience to be people who are familiar with the struggle, but also new to it. So, I talk about that in the introduction a little bit, like, um, just the spelling of words and things like that, that some people might just find, frankly, like distracting, not even politically, offensive or whatever, right? Um, and so we ended up that's why we started out with like the personals, the political, and then go into the roots of the new African independence movement, the fight against the prison industrial complex, and then we conclude with, the struggle continues, because that's when really the international situation, and right now the national situation is opening up a point where, like, you know, if the prison struggle, which is at such an, ebb right now, or flow, whatever the lower one is, I always forget. Um, you know, like, could learn some lessons from the, Minneapolis organizing, from the, you know, like the teachers organizing, a couple years ago. And if the ICE, like anti-ICE, anti-police, anti-prison forces could join, it could really be something Zionist forces worldwide could unite. And that's why I wanted to go to the 1804 books, because they just published the Trinity of Fundamentals. And we're getting into, political prisoner writing. So, and as soon as, Shaka saw what they were publishing, we met with them, he was like, yeah, let's totally do that. And, they did a great job putting the book together. I like the way it like feels, smells, like reads. I like everything about it. I think they did a great job.
So, Shaka, can you just talk a little bit about this new documentary and why you wanted to make a new one and what you wanted to do differently with this one?
Okay, well, the first one I got a chance to see, even though I participated in it, I got a chance to see it from beginning to the end in terms of completion. I actually got a chance to watch it. The second one, I haven't been able to do that. The first one was a little bit more personal in terms of the case, in terms of the situation with my son, in terms of chain of events and things of that nature. The second one, people wanted me to talk a little bit more about my politics, talk a little bit more about some of my activism or relationship with other organizations and political organizations and whatnot, some of my background in that area. So that's what I wanted to accomplish with that. I also wanted to kind of talk about introduce more of the New African Independence Movement and the politics around that movement and the different organizations within that movement, although not monolithic. I wanted to clearly articulate a particular stream in terms of revolutionary nationalism and New African communism and revolutionary socialism and so forth within the New African Independence Movement. So that's kind of pretty much what I wanted to do, accomplish in conjunction with me knowing that the book was getting ready to come out. They kind of went deeper into those areas for clarification.
Shaka, could you break down your politics, pertaining far as New African Revolutionary Nationalism, and also Atiba Shani's New African Communist politics and its influence on your development as a New African Revolutionary Nationalist? And also, could you explain what the New African Freedom Campaign is?
Yeah, first of all, like you have to be, we are not black nationalists. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a separation and there's a difference between black nationalism, which we consider bougie nationalism, and New African revolutionary nationalism. And the difference was what the insertion of one revolutionary in our politics in terms of our position on the land question, our position in terms of our relationship to the U.S. imperialist government in terms of colonialization and neocolonization, our internationalist, our position and stance in politics, which incorporates and includes a Pan-African vision of the diaspora of Africans throughout the world, and so forth. Although we identify the nationalist territory and land, particular states, as a target for liberation. However, we do recognize that ultimately the people themselves will decide
through struggle and through the leadership and through the Vanguard Party and what have you, other movement, how that shake out. And we also recognize that any type of secession or breakaway from within the U.S. empire, the United States will not be known as we know it today. And we also recognize that there are other movements within the North American continent for national liberation, and that's put waging national liberation and national independence struggles as well. Chatiba Shana, also Yaki, is one of my main mentors through back then with the Spirit Shield collective organization. And Atiba advocated and pushed a new African communist line, which is a higher stage of socialism, and also the Freedom Land Campaign and national independence and what have you, as recognizing that new African people as a nation within the continent of North America, and that we have a Pacific and unique historical development as a people coming from the African continent through the slave trade process that not only began through that process, but also began on the very continent of Africa when we first began to resist the enslavement and colonization of our people. That has not changed. It has not stopped. It has continued to evolve and continue to morph and continue to transform and transition into other forms of expression, which is the dialectical process. We believe in a dialectical materialist philosophy and ideology, where we critique and see a dialectical and historical materialist aspect of all things, and that is what guides our critique and analysis and evaluation of things in concrete reality.
I wanted to ask a question, Shaka, if I could, while we still got you, which is, what was the process like putting the book together, and what do you hope to get out of the book overall?
Well, I've been writing for a long time, a lot of years, and some of those pieces are just essays that have been published in different other publications or newspapers or magazines or whatnot that we pulled together through a collection. The objective is to, once again, like I said, to introduce a new generation into the existence of the new African independence movement and what that is and what they represent. And also the historical aspect of that movement. Like, a lot of people don't know about Atifa Shana. A lot of people don't know about Chokwe Lamampu. A lot of people don't know about the Obadali and Mario Obadali and so forth. A lot of people don't know about the RNATN or what have you, and other events that have taken place back in the day and whatnot that helped lay the foundations of the African independence movement and whatnot. I also wanted to bring attention to my case as well as the prison resistance movement and the contributions that people like myself, prison activists and political prisoners, are making towards the movement. And also get people to understand that prison is just another front of the larger struggle. There can be no process in terms of any type of real serious movement in this country or any country on a revolutionary plane that doesn't incorporate, it doesn't involve prisons and the prison resistance movement. It's just not gonna happen. And those that's out there involved in the struggle and that sacrificing and what have you is coming to where we at. 9 times out of 10. So I just want people to understand that component and break that down. So that was one of my main objectives, to push that out there and connect the dots as well. And the process was in terms of actually getting it published, going through yourself, and also PSL or the center that made known about the existence of 1804 publishers, and that they were willing to, after reading the manuscript, was willing to get behind getting the book out there and pushing it and promoting it and what have you. So I'm thankful and appreciative for that. That it just, again, creates another building block and bridge in the larger process.
Thank you, comrade.
Shaka, can you just talk a little bit about your situation right now? My understanding is you were recently moved again. Where do things stand in terms of your current conditions of confinement and your case and like your current struggles right now?
Well, in August of last year, I was moved back to the mountains to River North Correctional Center, where they had jumped on me and I was attacked by racist guards doing a hate crime, basically, in December 2021. I was moved from Buckingham because they was implementing a new system, what they call a new Virginia model, and I didn't meet the criteria, supposedly. So it's an administrative move. So, although I had to have a pending and ongoing lawsuit against various guards and administrators at Reverend North Correctional, and they should have never moved me back there. I was moved anyway. Apparently slipping through the cracks of certain people saying that they was not aware that I had ongoing civil litigation. So I was moved back there, placed in a housing unit under the supervision, the direct supervision of one of the main defendants that was in the lawsuit, who was one of the more aggressive ones during the attack, Sergeant Brenner, who's now been promoted to lieutenant. After being there for a few weeks or what have you, we went on lockdown, and I was scheduled to go out for surgery, for knee replacement surgery, which I did. Packed up around the 25th of September and went out for surgery October 1st. After surgery, I was moved to Sussex Correctional Medical Ward down there, which was supposed to be for physical therapy and recuperation. But however, I'm there for 30 days, never saw a doctor, never saw a nurse practitioner, received some physical therapy towards the latter end of my stay for approximately about four sessions or so, and then was unceremoniously and abruptly transferred back to River North Correctional on the day that I was supposed to be going back out to the outside hospital to see a cardiologist specialist. Although I had been told that I was being classified to remain at Sussex and went through the orientation, apparently not. So I was sent back to River North. When I get back to River North, everybody appeared to be shocked for his medical as to my return, asking me what was I doing back at River North. And I still had a bunch of medical appointments scheduled down in Richmond, which is like 5 hours away. So again, I'm back, current population. No property. Hadn't seen my property since September when one of the defendants, again, had access to my property, packed my property up. 2 weeks later, I was moved back to the infirmary because I could not get the physical therapy and the different type of, braces and bandages and things that I needed to help recover and heal my knee. So I moved back to the infirmary November 13th. November 17th, we had a guard get killed and went on total lockdown. So while we're on lockdown, I'm stuck in the infirmary. No property, inability to write, correspond, use the phone, communicate, etc. They're telling us that they're not going to move any property anytime soon, and we're going to be on lockdown till April or May. I'm explaining that I got court deadlines, etc. And come to find out, while I was on the way back from Sussex on October 30th, on October 20th, River North sent all my property to Sussex Correctional, knowing that I was supposed to be coming back. So when I came back, my property wasn't even in the facility. That property didn't return until November 17th. So me going back and forth and being given a runaround trying to get my property to no avail on November 30th, I decided to go on a hunger strike, demanding my property. I went on a hunger strike after 7 days on the strike with no eating, no food, only drinking a very limited of water. They moved me into a super filthy observation cell with a camera, etc. And 3 days later turned off all water, where I had to request them to give me water if I wanted water or wanted to flush the toilet. I remained on that hunger strike approximately 19 days. Well, once I spoke to the interstate contact people a couple of days later, they agreed to give me my property. They brought me my legal materials, turned on the water, but I had been denied a shower for 10 days, denied access to any hygiene, brushing my teeth, and things of that nature. The cell was super filthy. You got feces on the wall, people that masturbated in the cell, with the nurse, looking at the nurses, shit all over the walls, all over the bed, etc. It's just super nasty. You know what I'm saying? No access to cleaning supplies, no access to hygiene, no access to shower, etc. I would, after the hunger strike, I would be moved back to general population around December 20th, December 21st, and given all my property except for my tablet, which I didn't know at the time. Intel had been in my property that whole time, confiscating stuff, undoubtedly copying the stuff. And because I had two tablets, which was a result of their negligence, they confiscated both tablets and gave me the runaround about getting them. And what occurred was that, to sum up, was that they were able to get it usually. Only the intelligence officer investigators have access to your emails or your tablets and what's on them. Well, my tablet had my password on the back of it because I wasn't expecting it to be packed up or moved, so it allowed any officer, property officer, whatnot, to get into my tablet, which would allow them to see any and all photos, political photos, allowed them to see any emails that I received or sent out, and what it did was allow them to see that a level of organizing and networking that one was doing with different threads and public, essays and whatnot, writing the outline for the book and so forth and so on, legal work, legal organizing and things of that nature. So at that point, they had already determined they were not going to give me that tablet, and I still do not have a tablet this month later. Come January, when I was scheduled to go for a classification for an annual review to determine if my security level would drop, the week thereof, they bought me a bogus charge for possession of contraband. Keep in mind, this is 5 months later. They've been having the tablets for 5 months. During this time, the charge read that the event date happened on January 15, 2026. And the factual basis of the complaint, that the charge, the ticket, is stated that on January 15, 2025, I received 2 tablets belonging to Shaka Shakur, and therefore he is in possession of contraband. So, first of all, I was never in that particular institution in January 2025, for one. And two, it never said anything about abuse of the tablet being altered, tablet being, in any other condition than other what it was originally intended. They never processed the charge. I was never found guilty of the charge. None of that. A week before I was transferred here, I received a notice that my tablet privilege orders were being restricted per the assistant warden, Sharp, who was also a defendant within my lawsuit. So now I was moved here, which is a lower security institution, better security, better environment in terms of opportunities and vocational and academic opportunities. But I'm on a ward where it's a lot more older guys, people with wheelchairs and things of that nature need some assistance. It's the only area where they have cells where it's predominantly prison that have dormitories. I haven't been in a dorm since the 80s, probably would do well in a dorm due to PTSD issues. And so I'm still assessing the situation in my assessment. I've signed up for some programs and because I am high profile and because of online presence and criticism and whatnot, reputation eventually precedes one. So, it's always a situation where one is trying to paint a picture of, well, he's a paper pusher, he's a judge lawyer, he's a litigator, he's a problem, things of that nature, and try to undermine or delegitimize your ability to put in work, basically. And the whole thing, real quick, going all the way back to my initial going out for surgery and the way they did my property, it's been a concerted effort to disrupt one's ability to communicate with the outside and organize a network. From disappearing of incoming outgoing mail, from returning mail to centers without notification, something we're just finding out now that River North was doing on a large scale. The situation with my tablet, the attempt to get me on a bogus charge where they could put me on 1 or 2 or 3 months phone restriction. Like, they offered me to plead guilty on the one charge. If I would plead guilty, they would give me 60 days phone restriction. Because as the book came out and the documentary came out, which they were debating the book, they had a copy of the book, which they apparently ordered or what have you. I wasn't discussing the documentary. It's just, a concerted effort to, well, he's doing too much, and he's got too much influence. It isn't just on the case part. that for the case, we have a couple of attorneys that's looking into my original conviction, and as well as some other convictions. I got a hearing tomorrow on a bogus battery case that I caught on an officer back in 2006 where the end attacked me. And it came out later they had a rogue group of officers that was running around jumping on prisoners who was later charged. And so I was fired. So I have that here tomorrow. But in the meantime, we do have, some attorneys that's looking into researching my case and what have you. So we still the kind of limbo in the research in terms of post-conviction relief. And also still looking for and soliciting political attorneys for assistance in terms of both civil and criminal litigation. In regards to the defense campaign, the Shaka Shakur Freedom Campaign, well, one of the things that we did was create a nonprofit related to that campaign. As a building block and also as laying the foundation for if and when I get out, some of the things that I want to do back in India and some other spots and within the community in terms of so-called prison reform, but in terms of grassroots organizing and building a movement within the communities around prison, so-called prison reform and addressing criminal justice issues. Like in Indiana, for example, they building a modern-day CCOT, a $1.2 billion prison, super maximum type prison that ain't nobody talking about. But most people that's activists, that's into movement, know about the CCOT prison that's in El Salvador, which they should address and support and attack and what have you. But at the same time, we have the same issue in the U.S., that a lot of us, including probably myself, is going to end up at. In terms of the campaign, also, we're expanding, we're building, we have branches and chapters in different states. We're in Oakland, we're in Virginia, we're in Indiana, we're in New York, we're creating basic units in the form of defense committees that's while focused on my case and trying to bring me home. It's not just limited to that. It's also educating people about the prison industrial complex. It's also educating people about inside-outside support and how people on the outside can bring attention to the conditions of confinement within the prison system itself. But what I like for you all as well as Haki to address how people can get involved and how we can make that connection. And also that these are serious times, like one of the things, too, like I was saying about the attempt to undermine one's ability to communicate. It's like we also dealing with proxies up in here, what I'm saying, and neocolonial elements that support the status quo or the interests of the state or whatnot, that moves to undermine, you understand, your ability to communicate through sabotage, propagation, and other things, right? So once again, the support and attention that groups like yourself and people like yourself cast upon people like myself or whatnot helps insulate us, to save us, to secure us on certain levels in regards to more nefarious potentially activities, right? And we also trying to raise funds. Some of these chapters and whatnot is in the early stages of development or operating on stream budgets and what have you. We're starting to have a lot more people, a lot of young people, a lot of youth from the colleges and universities take an interest, especially since the documentary dropped, the book came out. And we're trying to find ways to solidify that support and that network, so that we can push it, homogenize it into, a strong, united fist of mine.
So I joined the campaign more recently, but I've been familiar with Shaka's work for a bit. I'd actually listened to some of the older MAQC episodes with him that were really fantastic, and had read some of his writings, and was really just drawn to his thought and his history of resistance and his rootedness in the New African independence movement and tradition, which I'm also really interested in. So I joined the campaign more recently. I think I'm one of the only ones in New York. There's different people in Virginia, which is a chapter I think that has been built out for a little bit longer and is more developed. There's a kind of center in Indiana where, Shaka is from, and so there's a stronghold there with the Indian Liberation Center and things like this. But yeah, I think I'm the only one in New York so far, so there's a little bit of definitely like work to get off the ground. But I think that yeah, one thing that I'm interested in doing is just connecting with the other kinds of prisoner support work going on in New York. There's a lot of different groups active here. There's a Jericho chapter. Um, there's different campaigns for political prisoners. Jakai's campaign is up here. And so I think, yeah, one thing that I'm really interested in doing is just trying to forge more connections between all these different groups. There's also the BAP Solidarity, which is up here. BAP, Black Alliance for Peace, also recently launched a prisoner solidarity kind of focus within BAP. And so there's lots of different kind of groups that are working on similar things. And but I think rather than thinking of it as just like recruitment per se, I think what's really important, like Shaka said, is to really think about pushing the particular political line, right? And to sort of forge ideological unity. Um, I, I've studied a lot about the Palestinian prisoners movement, and one thing that really strikes me about the Palestinian prisoners movement, what's so different from here, is that it's rooted in a concrete struggle for national liberation, right? And so that allows the Palestinian prisoners movement to have this unity that's really focused on this goal of national liberation. It's connected to outside struggles. When there's prisoner exchanges and prisoners are freed, they go right back into the resistance factions and continue, right? So that I think is what's a little bit lacking here, right? In the U.S. prisoner movement, we have this kind of framework of abolitionism, but it's not always kind of rooted in a concrete sort of vision of decolonization. And I think, the New African independence movement really is what has that, right? And so I think there's groups that are currently kind of in this phase of rebuilding, right? The Prison Lives Matter movement, the Spirit of Mandela, and so I think it's kind of the important thing is to kind of forge and build with these folks who are kind of thinking about how to build, a prisoner struggle, a prisoners movement, a prisoner solidarity movement that is really aligned around these ideas of, a vision of New Africa, which is to me like a concrete kind of idea of national liberation and national sovereignty, and not just kind of, thinking about liberation in the abstract, but rooting it in something concrete, which is land and sovereignty, right? So yeah, I think for me that's kind of what I'm thinking about. I know that there's some folks, that have done screenings of Shaka's new documentary, which is really fantastic. I'm in the process of kind of building out a two-part workshop series about the New African Prisoners movement, and we're going to be bringing in parts of Shaka's book and putting them into dialogue with some of James Yaki Sale's writing, and trying to give people a little bit more context for his work. I know that Shaka also knew Sanika Shakur, and so bringing in some of his writings and kind of placing his writings in a longer tradition, to give people this understanding that this comes out of a longer tradition. So those are some of the things that I'm working on. Obviously fundraising, but yeah, hopefully some of these kinds of attempts to kind of connect with other, people in the prisoner movement, forge ideological unity, really get clarity around this line of New African independence, and, have that be propelling, our work in the prisoner movement. Like, hopefully all of this can be tied up in the fundraising, that it can be sort of one and the same and not necessarily separate things. So yeah, I think that's probably about what I would say. It's been a real honor to get to know Shaka. I've had many conversations with him, and yeah, he's just I'm just always really impressed with. I mean, yeah, all political prisoners obviously deserve all of our respect, but for those who manage to stay so active, so many years into being in prison, Shaka is still so active in terms of not just kind of keeping up to date with what's going on and organizing efforts inside, but he just always has just ideas for projects, and he's just always willing to kind of rethink an idea. Yeah, to me, he's a real revolutionary mentor, and I'm really honored to be in contact with him and to support him. So yeah, I think that's all I would say. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. And I think that was very well said. And it gives people really a good idea also of who Shaka is and his his commitment and continue. He absolutely everything that you said. I co-sign. So, um, yeah. So maybe as we wrap up, and any of you are welcome to jump in and share things related to this question. But, what are the different ways that people can, support, get involved? Any calls to action at different levels of, whether it's letter writing or emailing or, up to organizing.
So, I mean, first thing is shakashakur.org. That's like the home base of the Shaka Shakur Freedom Campaign, where you can, there's like a about section, and of course, yeah, like we need money. It's going to cost money to free Shaka, and the one of the reasons I want to say why, like, we need to free Shaka is because Shaka is one of those individuals who is an organizer, and that's why there's so much interruption in its communications. That's why they target him wherever he goes. That's why you can't get a straight answer from anybody. That's why the prison system was built. That's this era of mass incarceration. It's not about the new Jim Crow, because it's not about all black people, right? It's about, you know historically black and African people have been the detonators of all social movements, and so mass incarceration is about, enclosing those and preventing them from communicating with those on the outside. And so, communicating with Shaka, donating money to the Legal Defense Fund, and also, there's a letter writing you can do. Shaka loves to learn about new organizations, engage in dialogue, discuss books, etc. There's a petition right now that's on change.org. For now, it might switch up, but you can go there to the shakashakur.org. And then you can, he has a store, shakashakur.org/store, where you can get the book, you can get pamphlets, t-shirts, and more that all will support the campaign. You can organize a screening of the documentary, and especially if you're attached to a university that can pay honoraria, all that will go to the Freedom Campaign. And then, you can get involved in the struggle, start a chapter, start a unit, branch, whatever you might have. Because right now we have people really all over the country, Indiana, like that's what his charges are, Indiana, even though he's in Virginia, right? But he's got, Virginia's like built up this chapter really rapidly because that's where he's at now, and that's been crucial to him, continuing to organize, continue to build those inside outside connections. And so that's what I would say, just plug in and also learn, study and realize, with others, because we can't study ourselves. I can't just pick up a book and know it. I gotta be in dialogue with the author and with others who can give me the context to it, right? And yeah, just sign up for the listserv. We don't send out many emails when we do open it. And yeah, free the land, free Shaka Shakur, all political prisoners of war, and self-determination for all peoples wherever they are.
Pretty much everything that Derek said, what I'm saying, that's what we want people to do, far as Shaka. Far as the NAFC, that's something that we just fairly trying to build within the inner cities of Richmond, Virginia, because like you said, ever since Shaka got to Virginia, it has been this evolution, far as organizing amongst New Africans in a predominant, what I'm saying, New African black city, because before Shaka got here, New African politics and things of that nature was it was kind of foreign to this region, and stuff like that. But ever since Shaka got here, it's been this uptake from the students, the community, the youth, wanting to learn about new African politics and things of that nature. So the NAFC is just, it's going to be that foundation, you know what I'm saying, to continue the evolution and education of new African politics within this city, because right now, over the years, there's been a lot of organizations that's been trying to, lead and take things into their own hands when it comes to new African community. So we want to kind of revolutionize that and put that back into the hands of the new African community, because a lot of these organizations here hasn't been having the best interest in the things that's been going on with our people within this community. You know what I'm saying? So we just want to, like as far as Shaka, we want to take advantage of that and reshape it and rebuild it and get more new African people involved within the prison struggle, because again, the political prisoner struggle as well has been kind of foreign to this area and things of that nature. So we just trying to galvanize the Black community right now to put out an organization that's for us and by us and things of that nature, so we can unify the Black community here and deal with our our social issues as well, economically, politically, culturally, that's going on within the Black community here in Richmond, Virginia, and in Virginia, period. So that's basically what the NAFC is trying to do, and that's what we're trying to organize within that section of the Shaka Shakur Freedom Campaign. But like Derek said, man, that petition, letter writing, we're asking people here in Virginia, what I'm saying, to, organize workshops for political prisoners so they can learn about other political prisoners, because as well, like Shaka, far as him, he's not just, advocating on his behalf, he's organizing on the behalf of all political prisoners and prisoners of war. So we want to get people in the community to organize workshops, educate people about the other political prisoner struggles, like Kamal Siddiqui, Mumia Abu Jamal, the other political prisoners that might not be as known as Shaka at this point in time as well, that needs that attention as well. So it's just about galvanizing and unifying on all fronts with other organizations, with other national liberation struggles, the free political prisoners and prisoners of war. So that's what the NAFC is about right about now. But, Derek pretty much hit on everything that we want people to, get involved with.
There's a lot of young people that have been, really galvanized around the struggle for Palestine in the last couple years. And it's the first time in a long time in the U.S. that I think people have sort of given a shit about what the U.S. is doing to other people, which it does all the time. But we're kind of in this moment, sort of 2+ years on after October 7th, where the movement for Palestine has kind of stagnated a little bit. People are getting tired, frustrated. We haven't had that many wins. Now now the US is just on an all-out assault attacking Venezuela, Iran. It's just there's so much. And so I guess I really want to say, for I've talked to a lot of young people kind of like this, and I think what's really important that needs to happen now is that people need to take what they've learned from their time in the Palestine solidarity movement, if that's what's happened, and kind of broaden it into a larger framework of anti-imperialist politics, right? To understand that Palestine is what the U.S. does all over the world, right? And also what it does here, right? And that that people have to understand that there are internal colonies in the United States. Like, we have to get really clear on that. And that the conditions inside of prisons in the U.S. today are genocidal conditions, right? There's an ongoing genocide here. And, just as Americans, it's very easy for them to tune out what's happening in Palestine or Venezuela, they can just turn off the TV and forget about it. It's very easy to, not know that there's a prison a few miles down the road from you, right? You don't know. I mean, every day there's people being murdered, in these prisons, and people have no idea. And so I think I would really just recommend, for young people who are kind of interested in getting involved in the prisoner struggle and, linking their understanding of Palestine to things happening here. I think I would just really encourage young people to, when you write to a political prisoner, I would encourage you to take it really seriously. I see a lot of kind of letter writing events and things like this. It's, that's fine. it's a start, but I talk to a lot of prisoners too who are like, yeah, I sort of get these one-off letters and then I never hear back. And, to me, that signals just kind of like a lack of seriousness. It's kind of like people engage in these activities just to do them and kind of maybe feel good about themselves. But like, there's a reason why, like Derek said, there's a reason why prisons make it as hard as possible to communicate with prisoners, right? There's a reason why they do that. And so we have to think of it as another front of this warfare that's being waged. That is part of the warfare that's being waged on prisoners and internally colonized people, is to isolate them from the outside world, right? And to isolate them from us. And so, when you write to prisoners, like, I would just really encourage young people to not only take it seriously, but to view it as a real gift and a real opportunity to learn from a living revolutionary, of which there are not that many left. A lot of them have already left us over the past few years. And, um, to not just see it as like, oh, prisoners are lonely, so I'm going to kind of do this charitable act toward them by writing them a letter. No, you should think of it as, an opportunity for yourself to learn from, a serious revolutionary. I mean, also, of course, support them, but also like understand that this is an opportunity that's being missed, for a lot of young people to really learn seriously from um, revolutionaries who are still with us, and we need to keep them with us. And we need to do as much as we can to get their thought and their words out there into the world so that people can know what they're thinking. They still have so many things to contribute to the struggle, and it's really on us to make sure that we make that possible, right? So yeah, I think that's just what I would say in closing is try not to just write one letter and forget about it. Like, really take it seriously, really take it as a commitment and an opportunity for yourself to learn from a very valuable mentor. So yeah, I would just leave it at that.
Yeah. And contact an organization to help you with it. Go to, that's the one of the things, the shakashakur.org.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, thank you. All that is very good advice. Hope folks get a lot out of the documentary, this conversation as well. And, we'll have links in the show description for everything that we kind of mentioned or referenced along the way. So thank you all.
Like always, myself and others, we all appreciate the solidarity and the support, But one thing we should look at too, let me say this real quick. Like what we see going on up in Minnesota, and we see common people of all nationalities and classes and what have you, that's coming out anti-ICE and the crimes that the feds is creating in their communities, and they're saying, no, we not going to accept that, etc. That's an indication, you understand, of a desire for change, and also the people will stand up in the face of oppression, blatant fascism, you understand? And then it's also people that we should be trying to reach and educate about the nature of the criminal justice system. Those are people that we should be trying to reach about the prison industrial complex. Those are people that we should be trying to create bases amongst. You know what I'm saying? And particularly North Americans, you know what I'm saying? Them is the people, their whole communities that y'all should be in. You understand? Organizing, attacking issues about racism, crime, criminal justice system, and so forth and so on. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to just allowing it to be a surface issue. And also in terms of evaluation, the fact that people is creating what a modern day underground railroad, for example, that they're creating infrastructures where they're doing counter surveillance, that they're monitoring the need of the factors within the community, etc., and taking positions, you know what I'm saying? This should be harder because these are infrastructures that can be utilized and developed and cultivated for further struggle along down the line as contradictions and social contradictions continue to sharpen, right?